The priests of ancient Egypt kept their most dangerous secret locked inside temple chambers that ordinary people were forbidden to enter. The gods you know, Ra, Osiris, Anubis, Horus, you've been taught to see them as symbols, as mythology, as stories. But inside those sealed chambers, the priests knew something different, something that would have collapsed the entire civilization if it had spread outside those walls. The Egyptian gods were not what you think they are, and today we're going inside. Here's what most documentaries get wrong. The gods were not born powerful. In the oldest Egyptian texts, writings that predate the pyramids, they're described not as eternal divine beings, but as survivors. The pyramid texts describe a primordial state called Nun, not a peaceful void, something alive, something hungry. And from that darkness, Ra didn't simply appear as the sun god. He clawed his way into existence, and every single night, he had to do it again. Ra is the most powerful god in the Egyptian pantheon, the creator of the universe, the sun itself. He is also, according to his own mythology, terrified of dying. The goddess Isis wanted Ra's secret name, because in Egyptian belief, a being's true name was its power. To know it was to control it. So Isis created a serpent from Ra's own saliva and caused it to bite him. The venom began killing him. Ra, the god of gods, was dying. What follows in the ancient text is remarkable. Ra doesn't face his fate with divine dignity. He screams, he writhes, his lips tremble. The text describes the great god shaking as poison spreads through his divine body. He was not invulnerable. He was not eternal. He could bleed. Isis offered to cure him, but she needed his true name. Ra refused, multiple times. In agony, he refused, listing all his other titles, clearly stalling, trying to find another way out. Eventually, suffering beyond endurance, he gave it up. He allowed his true name to pass from his body into hers. The most powerful god in existence had a vulnerability, a secret that could break him, and he was overcome not by a greater god, but by pain and patience. That is not the mythology of an all-powerful deity. That is the mythology of something that can be beaten. But the most disturbing story about Ra involves something far worse than his own pain. It involves genocide. The myth of the destruction of mankind records that Ra discovered humanity was plotting against him. His response: he sent his divine wrath, manifested as the goddess Hathor, to slaughter humanity, not selectively, not as punishment, indiscriminately. Hathor transformed into Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of destruction, and she began killing humans with pleasure. The text describes her wading through blood, unable, or unwilling, to stop. Then Ra changed his mind. Perhaps because without humans to worship the gods themselves would fade. So he flooded the fields with beer dyed red to look like blood. Sekhmet drank it, became drunk, and the killing stopped. The god who created humanity sent his own wrath to destroy it, then tricked that wrath with alcohol to save what remained. This is the true character of Ra. Not the benevolent sun god shining warmly over Egypt. Something far more complicated, far more dangerous, and far more honest about the nature of power. The murder of Osiris is the most famous story in Egyptian mythology, but the version most people know has been cleaned up considerably. Osiris was the first king of Egypt, not just a god of the dead, but a ruler. He brought civilization to humanity, agriculture, law, culture, and his brother Set hated him for every bit of it. In the popular retelling, Set invites Osiris to a banquet, produces a beautiful chest, says whoever fits inside it gets to keep it. Osiris climbs in, Set seals it, throws it in the Nile. Simple, almost elegant. The original texts are not elegant. In the earliest versions, Set and 72 accomplices nail the chest shut with molten lead, and once Osiris is dead, Set finds the body, tears it into 14 pieces, and scatters them across every corner of Egypt. 14 pieces, scattered deliberately. This was not a murder. This was an annihilation designed to be permanent. Isis searched all of Egypt for the pieces. She found 13. The 14th had been thrown into the Nile and eaten by fish. That part of Osiris was never recovered. Isis fashioned a replacement and performed the first act of resurrection magic in recorded mythology. She reassembled him. She brought him back. But here's what the sanitized version leaves out. Osiris didn't come back fully. He was resurrected, but he could not remain in the world of the living. He became king of the dead precisely because he was fundamentally incomplete. His resurrection was a miracle with a permanent asterisk. What the priests encoded here is something they clearly believed deeply, that death can be defeated, but never fully undone, that resurrection leaves a scar, that coming back always costs something you cannot get back. Isis had her husband back, what was left of him, and she had something else now, a son. Horus grew up knowing exactly what had been done to his father, knowing who had done it, and knowing that Seth was sitting on a throne that didn't belong to him. He was going to take it back. The conflict that followed, Horus versus Seth, lasted, according to Egyptian mythology, 80 years. Not a single battle. 80 years of trials before the gods, with the entire divine council arguing endlessly about who should rule Egypt. And during those 80 years, things happened that are almost never mentioned in modern retellings. Seth assaulted Horus. Horus, in a moment of rage, cut off his own mother Isis's head. The sun god Ra sulked and refused to speak to the council for days. The goddess Neith wrote a letter to the council essentially calling them incompetent. The oldest versions of this story, preserved in the Chester Beatty papyrus, are shockingly raw. These gods argue. They insult each other. They make political moves. They have agendas. This is not a mythology of perfect divine beings governing the universe with wisdom. This is a mythology of a pantheon that was fractured, petty, brilliant, and broken, all at the same time. And for the ancient Egyptians, that was exactly what made them believable. Not gods who floated above human weakness, but gods who sulked, who grieved, who made the wrong call and paid for it. Gods who looked from a certain angle uncomfortably like everyone else. Of all the Egyptian gods, the one that generates the most serious academic debate is not Ra, not Osiris, not Horus. It's Thoth. Thoth is the ibis-headed god of writing, wisdom, knowledge, and magic. He is credited in Egyptian mythology with inventing language, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. He allegedly wrote the books of Thoth, sacred texts containing all knowledge of the universe. Here's what makes Thoth different from every other Egyptian god. The Greeks identified him with their god Hermes, and the combined figure, Hermes Trismegistus, meaning thrice great Hermes, became one of the most influential intellectual figures of the ancient world. An entire philosophical tradition called Hermeticism was attributed to him. And unlike other gods, ancient writers frequently described Hermes Trismegistus not as a divine being, but as a human, an extraordinarily wise human, possibly a king, someone who lived so long ago that mythology had transformed his memory into divinity. The philosophical texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, collected in the Corpus Hermeticum, present a sophisticated system for understanding reality, the nature of the cosmos, the relationship between the divine and the material world. Concepts that have no clear origin in Greek or Roman thought. They look Egyptian, Old Egyptian, pre-pyramid Egyptian. For centuries, scholars assumed these texts were forgeries written in the early Christian period. A 17th century scholar named Isaac Casaubon made this argument, and it held for decades, but subsequent analysis complicated the picture. Parts of the Hermetic tradition clearly have roots that predate Alexandria. The framework they describe appears genuinely ancient, which leaves open an uncomfortable possibility that whoever Thoth was, whatever historical figure, if any, gave rise to the legend, they possessed knowledge far older and more sophisticated than our timeline of intellectual history allows for. We don't know what filled the libraries of Egypt before the fires. We don't know what knowledge existed before the Old Kingdom. Thoth's mythology says he was there before all of it, before the other gods, in some versions. And myths have a way of remembering, in distorted form, things that history forgot on purpose. The Egyptian gods were not simple nature symbols. They were complex, contradictory, sometimes terrifying figures embedded in a civilization that looked at the chaos of the world, the floods, the famines, the wars, and didn't pretend it was orderly. They created gods who fought every day to keep chaos at bay, and sometimes lost. A god who could be poisoned, a king torn into pieces, a pantheon that argued and bled and made mistakes, a figure of wisdom so ancient that time itself turned him into a god. That is not a mythology designed to comfort people. That is a mythology designed to tell the truth. If that changed how you think about the ancient world, even a little, there's more where that came from. Subscribe, and don't let history stay buried. The thrones burned, but the stories survived.